What's up, humans, and welcome to a late night Psicoactivo because it turns out that it is Eric Burlison kind of a day. It wasn't enough to be on Redacted today with Clayton Morris. He was also on a Twitter space from a gentleman by the name of Diligent Dennison. I'm gonna leave it in the description. Burlison's part starts at 4 hours and like 20 minutes or so. It's really, I don't know how to describe this, but I know that Burleson did this. I will just show you what he said. He was asked a question by a user named Tupacabra, who is known in the UFO community. He was part of the space too, and he asked him a question about David Grush because he spoke earlier about David Grush and about the Nazca tridactyls. And this seemed like an obvious question because it was a space about Trump. So Burleson agreed to do the space. I was already thinking that probably Grush wasn't happy with him saying what he said on Redacted and using his name to say that. But now he doubled down and he went even way further, talking about President Trump and how David Grush allegedly briefed him about Nordic beings and hybrids. He uses a very curious name to describe hybrids. And I would guess that if this is true in any way, that Grush briefed Trump on other races, probably, if that is the case. But let's just hear what he said, and then we'll talk about it afterwards, and I'll show you some things that are related to this in some way. But let's hear what Burleson said on that Twitter space.
That the Nordic people or the Nordic aliens are like a few hundred years more advanced than we are, but they're not super advanced. They're not like he said the Greys, whatever is sending the Greys is extremely advanced, like thousands and thousands of years more advanced than us, because it's doing all the anti-gravity stuff, all the crazy all this crazy stuff that's very highly advanced, and a lot of it is what he says with the Greys is psionic. So they basically don't have physical interfaces. They're using their mind, and that there's an interface that picks up thought, and then that and that's how they operate these vehicles, is out of psionic. But the Nordic people somewhat resemble humans, and they have been experimenting with crossbreeding with humans. And he says some of them, that there are aliens that are crossbreeds living in the world.
So we got a second time in less than a week, people talking about hybrids and Nordic beings. That's the first time this week, but we know that Representative Burleson and that UAP panel spoke about these races that are being reported and have been reported for years. And he mentioned Nordics, tall whites, mantids, and the grays. Oh, and reptilians.
And I asked him, I go, okay, do they know that they're a crossbreed, or do they, like, how would you know that they are a crossbreed? And he didn't have an answer for that. Like he didn't know if they knew what, but he said that the briefings he's had talked about them. And he said when Trump was briefed on this topic, because Trump finally had a briefing, and he was in the middle of impeachment, like he was in the middle of being impeached. So he's going through that, and then he had like this existential briefing that just kind of rocked his worldview. He joked in the briefing, whenever they said that there are these half breeds, he joked that Adam Schiff must be one of them.
You heard it here, folks. Shout out to this guy. I don't know who he is, never met him, but he got that out of Burleson. And yeah, Tupacabra was the one who asked the question about Grush. So the correlation that I'm going to make here, that somebody else made it before me, but I got to do it. Joe Murgia, UFO Joe, reminded me through a post that he made. I'm going to leave it in the description of when David Grush spoke to Joe Rogan about briefing people on these things and how shocked people were. So this is like one of the few times when Grush has been more detailed in his explanation of what these types of NHI are. And Joe Murgia also asked around because if you guys don't know who Joe Murgia is, he goes by the UFO Joe on X. He does like really detailed transcripts of things that happen within the UFO world. And to those who don't know, when David Grush approached George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell, Murgia was there. And as far as I know, the way it went is that George and Jeremy didn't tell Joe who Dave was, but Joe, being as inquisitive as he's always been, he started asking Dave questions, and then he slowly kind of realized what was happening and who David was. And I don't know what the reaction from him was necessarily and specifically, but I would say that he was surprised, skeptical, because he's always really skeptical, but surprised and very inquisitive. And he's the one who remembered this clip from the Joe Rogan experience when David Grush visited Joe Rogan. He grabbed the clip from Michelangelo. Shout out to Michelangelo and to Joe as well. And this is what they discussed.
So when it comes to these, I'm going to bring it back to these actual entities.
Yeah.
Do we know, or we do have an understanding of how many of them we're talking about and the variety of them?
Well, yeah, there is a variety, and we have a certain number of different things. But the like total numbers of like what's interacting with us on Earth, I mean, nobody knows that. And I mean,
but there's an understanding of some that they do believe are interacting with us, and there's a variety in terms of there's variables.
Yeah, I talked to people who are familiar with the biological analysis and everything, so we have some idea, not a complete picture, because it's like you're looking at it, it's like, well, I don't even understand the physiology at all. It's like, what the heck? It's like way different, right? So, we have at least
a description of this physiology.
Yeah, no, I was in the room when, gotta be careful. I don't want to. I was in Washington D.C. with a very number of senior people that work for members of Congress.
Joe speculated that a safe bet of who these people might be would be the Senate Armed Services. And that's who David Grush was talking to. He doesn't mention Trump here at all, but he did brief people like really senior members of the Senate Armed Services or the House. I don't know, but the safest bet is the Senate Armed Services.
Let's put it that way. When I was still in government, and I brought the people who worked on that stuff to the Hill. I mean, this is why the members were so confident to put out the Schumer amendment and stuff. And I was like, please explain. And they went into all those details and stuff. And I remember, some of the professional staff members were like, whoa, like they were like in G-lock, right?
I asked what G-lock means because I was always curious about this term. And apparently this is a term that they use in the Air Force, or pilots use, to describe when they're like shocked, or like G-lock is like, So whenever I'm guessing that if they had an ontological shock when they were being told this, that's what David Grush meant when he says G-lock.
Right. Because I mean, like a total world bubble got burst right there for a lot of people. And so we have some idea. It's not a complete picture. I mean, it's just like, but you're not even bringing in the right people. Like I think about my friend and colleague, Dr. Gary Nolan, which I started the Soul Foundation nonprofit with. I mean, he's like, Nobel level biologist, virologist. Like he's the guy that you would want on it, but he's not on it. So I think we can make a lot of progress in our understanding once again, if this is more broadly studied in an open environment.
Okay, and in order to describe G-Lock a little better, I want to show you something else. Representative Robert Garcia came out of a classified briefing last year at the start of 2024. And you may remember, but I'll show you his face and his demeanor, which I think is a good example of what G-Lock means. So let me play you this. And this from News Nation right after he came out of that classified briefing. Just look at his demeanor and how excited he seems, I think.
Okay. We got to talk about this more. Okay. So, I mean, does any of this go towards your conversation about trying to get this bipartisan bill? I mean, is there something that touched on this?
I mean, look, I think that the bipartisan bill came out of a discussion at a first hearing to ensure that pilots have an ability to report UAPs. There right now is no system for pilots or aviation personnel to report UAPs, whatever UAPs may be. And so the bill would actually do that. Obviously, we can't talk about the details of the briefing, but I think there was some interesting information. And so I think that this.
I don't know. When I saw him first, I thought this guy looks like he learned some shit, you know? And I still think the same way. And I think this is what Grush was referring to when he said G-Lock.
This is a topic that I think is a national security issue. And it's really important that there's disclosure and transparency. I think that's what the public wants. I think it's also a very serious topic. And so we've got to just take it with seriousness. It is not a joke.
And without giving up state secrets here, we had a couple other members who just here who said they were disappointed in what they were bipartisan, Democrat or Republican. But one member used the term that what they were exploring here were, her phrase, interdimensional beings. Is that something that we're dealing with here potentially?
I mean, I think it's easy to be disappointed when you don't get all the information that you want, which I understand. I would have loved to receive much more information, but I think that it's reasonable to say that everyone that was in the room received probably new information. I certainly did, and I think it's interesting, additional information to continue the investigation and ask more questions. So
that's as far as we'll go. Just wanted you guys to see how shocked he was. But fun fact, Robert Garcia, his family is from Peru. So I don't know if he's aware of what's going on with the tridactyls, but it would be interesting to hear his perspective on it. And just to finalize, because I've been trying to ask around, and Joe Murgia, who did meet Grush back then, I think it was on the same day Corbell and Knapp did, he said that he heard from someone in a position to know that this is not an accurate representation of what Grush has told Burlison. He said, take that for what it's worth, but nobody was there for the combo between these two, so nobody would know what exactly they discussed. But I would tell you that Joe is very connected to Corbell and Knapp, and Corbell and Knapp have a direct line with Grush. And if Grush didn't like what Burlison did today, I would think that he was probably calling people and trying to find out what happened, why Burlison did this. Honestly, I don't know what to think. I don't know if Grush maybe planned this. Maybe he felt desperate because he's not looking at any action from a more official level or a more organized level. And maybe this is kind of like a new alternative that he's using. But honestly, I don't think that coming out saying these things on a Twitter space is the best way to do it. So I think it was a mistake from Burlison. I don't know what drove him to have this day saying all these things and using David Grush's name. I wouldn't be happy if my name was being used like this, but I can't speak for Grush. I don't know what he feels. I don't know what he thinks. I'm just saying what I think and what I would do. But who knows? Maybe Grush did say that, and maybe he did brief President Trump about Nordics and half-breeds, I think they said, but it's essentially they're hybrids. Maybe he did. I don't know. What do you think happened? Why do you think Burlison had this day and said all these things? And how do you think Grush is feeling right about now with all of this? Because his name has been used and spoken the entire day. Oh man, can't wait to see the reaction from him. I would bet that someone from the UFO community, a journalist or something, should come out with a statement from Grush reacting to this. It's necessary at this point. It's just been too much. So, but I don't know. Maybe it's all true. I don't know. I don't know what to think. What do you think? Let me know. If you like the content you see, I'm going to ask you to like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. That's all you need to do in order to help us, and it is what helps us the most. So thank you. But if you want to support in any other way, there's a few links down there you can choose from. You can support us through KGRA, or you can become a member on YouTube. Anything you choose to do is always appreciated. So thank you. That's it for me today on this video, but I'll see you guys in the next one. Remember, stay curious and inquisitive, like Burlison, always. Bye.